Greetings, my friends. This is Dr. Jimmy, and today we have a fresh new start on today, Monday, June 13th, 2016. Having completed all the videos on the history of Halloween Horror Nights 22, we move on to the event which was held at Universal Studios Florida in the year 2013. Nearly, but not quite 3 years ago now, because it's not September yet, right? And it is, of course, the event of Halloween Horror Nights 23. What evil has taken root? Haha! Yes, that's what it was called. And before we get into it, though, the T-shirt of the day. Today's T-shirt is a fan-made T-shirt purchased from Redbubble, a lovely website. All kinds of neat stuff you can find there. And it's referencing the motion picture The Wicker Man. That is the original motion picture The Wicker Man, not the dreadful remake with Nick Cage. No, not the one about bees are in my eyes. No, not that one. The original one. Yes, with Edward Woodward. You know, Jesus Christ, something like that. Yes, that's the one. Yes, and Christopher Lee, very nice as Lord Summerisle. Yes, Summerisle May Day Festival. What fun! Summer is a-comin' in loud, sing cuckoo. Yes, there we go. So that's one much better movie. And although it's never been an official IP for Horror Nights, I suppose it did influence heavily some of the scenery that we saw in Scare Zone last year. At least the big wicker figures were there at the end of that grown evil. No, not grown evil. Evil's roots, which oddly enough may connect in a weird way to what evil has taken root. So there is some connection, perhaps intriguingly, with our subject matter. But before I get into the new event, I did mention one of the merchandise items from last year, was from 2012, was a vinyl. And I took it out of the box. Well, you see, my friends, you see, I believe that if you have a toy and you want to play with it, that's fine. You know, some people think, oh, it's a collector's item, it'll decrease its monetary value. It only matters if you ever plan on selling it, and I don't, you see. Never plan on selling it, so why should I care if it goes up or down in price? I have it for my own amusement. Also, if I hadn't taken it out of the box, I never would have noticed all this stuff on the back. Oh, look, he's got... What is that? Is that a sock? No, that's where it's torn his stuff, and you can see the other shirt and his brain leaking out. I missed that. Couldn't see that in the box. And on the foot, you can see the actual name of the artist. Yes, it says Luis Orazi, artist. So it's a very nifty little item. It's a random Walking Dead zombie from the first year they ever had Walking Dead at the event, 2012. So we'll move on then to 2013. The event, Halloween Horror Nights 23, What Evil Has Taken Root, was at Universal Studios Florida on the evenings of, beginning on Friday, September 20th, and proceeding in September to the dates of the 21st, 26th, 27th, 28th, and 29th, then October 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, and the 31st Halloween night, but not ending there. No, also November 1st and 2nd as well. A total of 27 nights, which I think was a record. That was the longest nights in any event up to that point. And furthermore, the earliest start date ever, they'd never started as early as September 20th. In fact, this would be the first Halloween Horror Nights in history, at least in Orlando, that started before the beginning of autumn, which is on September 21st, the day of the equinox, the autumnal equinox. So actually it started at the last day of summer. How weird. For Horror Nights to start in the summer, a fall event. And yet it did. So, how do we start talking about Halloween Horror Nights 23? Well, sad to say, I think it's best to start again with the popular refrain of, you know, the best laid plans of creative and art and design Afghan Glay, which is Scottish for gets fucked up, basically. I think it literally means, you know, often goes askew. but let's not get on with it. Basically, you plan something and God laughs. You make a wonderful plan for what you're going to do for the event, and then shit happens and you have to change it around a bit. And that happened yet again in 2013. Oh dear, what happened that year? Well, again, I don't know precisely 100% about all of their plans, because a lot of it was never officially revealed, and I've only heard bits and pieces and whispers and rumours, and there's some speculation involved, and also, but a little bit of compelling evidence that it is what they were doing. There seemed to be a theme for the event. I mean, it was called "What Evil Has Taken Root." And when the event began, there were all sorts of roots and branches and vines, things on the in the front of the park where the archway was, implying that there might be some sort of theme there, a sort of roots and growing things. And intriguingly enough, several of the haunted houses that year, both intellectual property and some of the not so intellectual property, did feature a lot of roots and branches and trees and forest scenes. Even when they switched one out, the one they might have had before would have had a forest scene, possibly switched with one that definitely had it. So, and even the Bill and Ted show had a weird connection to that theme that year. There's some evil shit happening in the woods, as someone once said. Essentially, it seemed to connect, and in fact, there was stuff when the website showed up. Of course, we saw the art design of these trees in a forest and a rather strange face in the sky. And another promotional thing they did that year, which I'll come upon. Also, the blog posted by someone calling themselves PS also involved going into the woods. It seemed to imply that there was some sort of overall forest, woods, scary trees, forest theme, at least thematic connections with all these items, and yet that didn't happen. Why not? Well, I think you can thank the higher-ups and deals that were made up above and beyond the people who put the event together, deals that were made at a higher level with the intellectual property rights holders for the Walking Dead television program. And due to that contract, they had to change everything that was going to be out in the streets. Now, I did hear from numerous people back in the day when I was getting a lot of info that there was something before in the streets that was supposed to be quite spectacular and amazing, and that eventually had to be scrapped entirely. And I've been able to piece bits and pieces together, and this is what my theory is about what was going to happen. It's not something I 100%, so I might be a bit off on a detail here or there, but I think very closely went something like this. In a similar way to the cemetery they did the year before, I think their original plan was to make a whole great evil forest, ripping up through the pavements and sprouting all over Universal Studios Florida. I think using the same idea of set pieces they could roll in after the parade, you know, because not the parade still happened, still going on, so they had to roll in set pieces, that they would roll in set pieces of trees and forests and stuff growing up, and it would encompass many areas of the park, as if some strange supernatural growth came up, filled with evil spirits. I've heard about evil tree spirit scare actors who were supposed to be attacking humans because maybe they resented, maybe it was ecological, they resented trees getting cut down. I heard about lumberjacks who might have been fighting the tree spirits, or maybe they've been turned by them and now they're going to use their chainsaws on humans instead. Yeah, a bit of a CDT, chainsaw drill team of lumberjacks. I've heard rumors about those that might be true. Some people think that what they did last year in Evil's Roots represented what you would see throughout many areas of the park last year. except without all of the retrospective 25 years of characters they had in there. But rather, they would probably have more of the tree spirits, more of the strange creatures associated with the forest, and those weird little pixies, the new characters they added that year in that scare zone might have been seen, the weird tree goblins and tree forest demons and goblins and things of that sort, and the evil tree fairies or whatever they were. All of that might have been there that year. It may very well be something along those lines. They reused those design concepts for that scare zone last year is what one theory, and it may very well be because of course they named the scare zone Evil's Roots, and it does seem to connect very strongly to the name of the event in 2013. I also know of another thing that was going to be happening in another part of the park, especially New York, because from a very good source I heard they actually were doing rehearsals of people rappelling down and going up on wires up onto some of the facades of buildings in Hollywood and in New York street area, and it had to do with similar to a show and a presentation in the streets they had at Universal Studios Japan about the same time for what they call over there Biohazard, but here Resident Evil, as Resident Evil was an IP for the event. And the idea was a Resident Evil scare zone with some of the lickers and Nemesis and perhaps some other creatures and zombies in that New York area, and people coming and the whole thing happening up in the building on wires and rappelling down the buildings, all that stuff that they did in Japan. So that was something they might have been planning. You're definitely doing something aerial in New York, because they had rehearsals at night early in the year before all of that went away. And all of that went away, including, apparently, there was an issue with stilt walkers, because one of the Iniquitous had fallen the year before when guests were bad, and so they decided they weren't going to do any stilts, and that kind of also led to their decision, because I think they needed big stilt walkers for the original forest design. But of course that contract with AMC is what really killed it, and I was shocked when I learned in the summer that all the streets would be Walking Dead. What the fuck, you know? All 3 seasons, the first, second, third season represented in the streets. This is what ultimately happened. So that was the biggest shocking change for the event. But there was another one, because of course once again there was a change in one of the houses. They had originally planned to do a house based on American Horror Story. Now that year, I think, let me see, they've had 5 seasons so far this year, so that means 4 in 2015 and then 20, see, that would be, let's see, 5 seasons so far this year, because the 5th season just ended. The 5th season started in 2015, so there would have been 3rd season would have just started when the event began. So it was American Horror Story, and probably that house would have either been the first series Murder House or the second series Asylum. And I think Asylum probably heavily would have been what the house was about. The season had just aired, because again it would fit in with the forest thing. There are quite a lot of scenes in the woods with strange creatures, if you remember, when the mutated victims of the evil Nazi doctor and the nun would go out and feed them, remember, from Asylum. Asylum was a weird, trippy season with everything from demons, the personification of death, the angel of death, and aliens, as well as, you know, crazy people in an asylum and everything else that were in Nazi experiments, all sorts of weird shit in that particular series for American Horror Story. And that might have been what that house was, or it would have been the first 2 seasons, I don't know. They never did the house, the deal fell through, and so they had to come up with another replacement, which was another intellectual property, and one that also fit the whole forest theme, except they weren't able to do that either. So there you go. That's how it went. Alright, so that's where the plans that fell awry. And of course, as the year went on and leaked information began to trickle out, but before I got the leaked information, even then, even though it came out rather early that year, I'd already made my April Fool's videos, and I made a rather silly selection of videos suggesting that it was the 100th anniversary of the first Universal horror film, Jekyll and Hyde, and they should do a two-part event all about 100 years of Universal horror, all of which I made up off the top of my head. Pure BS. But one of the houses I suggested was an American Werewolf in London, because I thought, well, that might give some credibility, because people might have heard they were going to do that house the year before and they weren't able to. So, haha, then, you know, that might make it seem slightly more credible in my series of rather silly houses, including, you know, one based on the Munsters, I think, well, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and I think there was one based on giant bug movies, that kind of nonsense, you know, Mantis and whatever that praying mantis movie was they did, that one, and giant ants and that sort of stuff from Universal science fiction movies like Them and the tarantula and all of that. So I thought that would be quite silly, and it was all a joke, except of course what I said about Werewolf, that they wanted to do it the year before, but now they finally got it and they'll be able to do it and do it right, was all correct. And I didn't realize it at that time. But it turned out that is exactly what happened, and Werewolf did show up at last in 2013. Alright, so when I began to hear about the event, of course, I continued my own clue giving with my cryptic comments. I had called them statements, but I decided to call them cryptic comments, and I thought, well, maybe it'll take a little bit longer for people to guess if instead of making a statement, I make just a one-word comment. And so I made one-word comments for all the houses, just one-word clues, single word. I thought it'd be harder for people to figure it out, and people still figured it out rather quickly, because again, I think it leaked to more than one person, and people had lists of houses and just played match game. So, yeah. Sometimes they matched it up to the wrong house, but it was still a house they'd only know about if they'd already heard. You know, so I thought, well, that tells you something. People already know there's a house, so that's how they are able to guess these. Kind of upset me, and I was already beginning to realize there's some difficulty with this cryptic clue thing. If it leaks out wide enough, it really there's no point to it. But I stubbornly persevered for at least a couple more years in the cryptic clue business. Oh well. But anyway, officially though, the event was slowly teased, and but they had the early announcements, or at least one house, earlier than ever before. When they showed the website, it almost immediately brought up one of the houses, Cabin in the Woods, and announced it. And so this was, I think, the year they really started announcing houses a bit earlier. And one of the houses leaked after, of course, they could no longer do American Horror Story, and they did a different house instead. Was Evil Dead, based on the remake, the reboot that had come out, or prequel, depending on how you look at it, that had come out that same year. Or rather, had come out just before, or earlier that year. That's right, earlier that year. And it happened when they released the Blu-ray, because when they released the Blu-ray, they had a thing in the Blu-ray about a little insert about how it was going to be a house at Horror Nights in Hollywood and Orlando, and you could, you know, win a free trip to one of them. And it was like, bloody hell, it gave the whole thing away. And before it was ever officially announced, you know, there it was, right there in his promotion in the home video, leaking. And so once again, they didn't manage to, just like the Burger King thing or other leaks that happened with promotional deals, and they got released earlier than they had intended to release it to the public. So that's how Evil Dead got leaked. But when the site came up, they tried to tease the houses a little bit before they revealed everything, and they did this with a rather weird new idea, a blog. There was someone apparently posting a blog that had about Evil Has Taken Root, or the Evil's Roots blog, whatever it was called. But it was not about the event. It was allegedly being written by someone calling themselves PS. Not like a postscript at the bottom of a letter when you add a little extra something, but the initials were PS. Who was PS? Paul Stanley of KISS? Or Peter Sellers of Inspector Clouseau? Or was it, someone else entirely? Could it have been a woman or a man? And we didn't know. Or we know someone called PS. Remember, BS was Boris Schuster from Legendary Truth, but this was someone else called PS, and they were posting a blog about strange things going on in their house and in the woods. They were investigating some friends that were disappeared a few years before, apparently. Some people that disappeared in the woods, and they were going to try to figure out what happened to them. Very slowly the little bits and pieces began to come out about PS trying to track this down, and became even more paranoid because weird things started to happen when PS started doing this investigation. But I've come to the end of this video, so I'll have to continue with PS next time in part 2.